Hi and welcome everybody to the Endo Fertility Podcast, where you will be empowered to learn how to thrive and conceive with endometriosis. If you want to understand more about your endo, how this can affect your fertility, and how you can personally take action to optimise your health and life, then this is the place for you. I'm your host, Dr. Lizzie Alexander, the Endo Fertility Specialist, and I'm a marine biologist turned integrative nutrition and health coach and holistic massage therapist. Most importantly, I know what it's like to have chronic fatigue, endo, and struggle with fertility. I am now a super busy yet thriving wife, business owner, and mother of a gorgeous little boy. Join me every Wednesday as I jump into topics that will support and guide your healing and fertility journey, from health and nutrition, lifestyle, emotional and spiritual support, and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy listening. This episode is brought to you by my Endo Fertility Resource Library. Inside the library, you'll discover the free resource hub with 3 great downloadable products to get you started. An ebook called 5 Ways to Start Dropping Your Pain and Optimise Your Fertility. A short guide to sperm health, great for getting your man started on improving his own health. And an infographic with 88 things I did to get pregnant. Make sure to check out the show notes for the link. Welcome back to episode 45. I've been on a bit of a break from the podcast as life with moving countries and everything else just became a little bit too much, to be honest, and I'm now back. So I'm here to bring you the rest of season 3, and today I'm sharing with you another great episode with the wonderfully knowledgeable Danielle Ryan-Broida, a registered herbalist, naturopath and nutritionist. Now, I interviewed her for episode 38 back in June last year, although it felt much more recent than that, on medicinal mushrooms and the role that they can play in healing your healing journey. Now, she mentioned that she was writing a book at that time. Well, the book that she has been co-authoring with founder of Four Sigmatic, Tero Isokaupilla, is now finished, and I've been really privileged to have seen a full copy of this before its launch date next week on the 27th of September. So the book is called Healing Adaptogens, The Definitive Guide to Using Super Herbs and Mushrooms for Your Body's Restoration, Defense and Performance. Now, it's a fantastic book, so easy to read, full of information, and more importantly, easy to use. I always love to share tools that can help you as part of your healing and fertility journey. So in this episode, we talk all about the book, from what inspired them to write it, to details on which adaptogens they included and how these can help you deal with the stresses of life and learn to thrive and not just survive. You can find details on how you can purchase this book on the webpage and also on the links that I've supplied with this episode. So as a reminder, or in case you haven't heard episode 38, here is an introduction to Danielle Ryan-Broida, who she is a key player in the worldwide mushroom movement, and as a registered herbalist of the American Herbalist Guild, Certified Holistic Nutritionist, Instructor of Mycology, and National Educator at Four Sigmatic, Danielle is teaching the world about the importance of life on functional mushrooms, and I can guarantee you her enthusiasm is totally infectious. So prior to joining forces with Four Sigmatic, she received her BA in Environmental Studies and Philosophy from Whitman College in the US, and she went on to study Ayurveda in India and became a certified yoga instructor on the banks of the Ganges River. She then worked with a naturopathic doctor in Indonesia, where she became a certified raw chef and detox coach. But it was leading trekking adventures in the backcountry of Thailand where she became particularly fascinated by herbal medicine, while also becoming fluent in Thai. Now, I won't lie, I am totally jealous of her career choices and where she has lived. And if I could go back and redo things, I would definitely do some of what she did. So after several years in Asia, she landed in Boulder, Colorado to formalize her education in holistic medicine. And upon completing her graduate studies in clinical herbalism, she opened her private practice where she worked with hundreds of clients specializing in functional mushroom-based treatment for individuals with autoimmune conditions and chronic illness, which is why I think she's just a perfect interviewee to bring on this podcast. Now, Danielle brings her passion and expertise in herbal medicine, clinical practice, teaching, formulation, and a deep love for fungi and adaptogens to everything she does. Now, Danielle now works for Four Sigmatic, which is a great company that was started out in Finland by a guy called Tero, who I mentioned that she's co-authoring this book with, where his roots as a 13-generational mushroom farmer and traditions of drinking functional mushrooms and adaptogens with coffee have been brought into the mainstream, which has been backed by tons of scientific study. So enough of the introductions. I apologise if the acoustics are slightly echoey, as we're still unpacking, and so there's not much to mop up the sound. And to be honest, I really didn't fancy sitting in a cupboard and interviewing Danielle, although I did think of sitting in the toilet, and I thought, nah. So I'm afraid you're just going to have to bear with me. So I hope you're sitting comfortably with a cup of herbal tea, with your feet up, or maybe you're on your commute to work or cooking. Whatever you're doing, I really hope you're going to enjoy this. Danielle, welcome back. It's been amazing to have you back on the podcast. So much has happened since we last chatted, but most importantly, you finished your book that you wrote with Tero Isokaupilla, founder of Four Sigmatic, on healing adaptogens, which is what we're going to talk about today. And I'm very, very excited about that. So how have you been?
Thanks for having me, first of all. It's been a really wild time, and I think most of us can relate to just a lot of movement happening in the world. Energy feels like it's speeding up quickly, and it just continues to remind me of the relevancy of adaptogens and how perfect they are for what so many of us are feeling, both on an energetic and physical level in most of our lives today.
Yeah, I literally couldn't agree more on a personal and as you said, on a world perspective. I think there is definitely a need for this subject. So it's just brilliant that you're going to be talking all about it. So in episode 38, we had a fantastic chat about functional mushrooms. I have to say, from a personal perspective, it left me like exhilarated about the potential of fungi or fungi. You say fungi in the US. I think we say fungi in the UK. Now, I was literally tingling. I remember after our conversation and just buzzing. I was like, I want to become a medical herbalist. I was like, just everything about our conversation was amazing. Just because your passion for plants and all things nature is just totally contagious. So, you know, you'd been talking about doing the book, and I was absolutely over the moon to hear you'd finished it. And now that you want to share all about it with my listeners, especially, I feel really privileged, as I was just saying, to have seen a pre-launch copy. So really, really excited. I've got so many questions. And let's see where this goes, but we may not answer some of them. There may be so many things to go through. So I think the first place to start really is with the title, Healing Adaptogens, the definitive guide to using super herbs and mushrooms for your body's restoration, defense, and performance. What a title. That sounds absolutely amazing. So in a nutshell, what are adaptogens? What is your book about? You know, you go into depth in chapter 1, but maybe you could give us a quick summary.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much. I wish everyone could see our faces. I'm smiling so big over here. It's just so lovely to get to talk about these incredible plants and to have us and mushrooms in this book. It covers 16 plants and 5 mushrooms, and these are the most phytochemically complex foods on the planet. So superfoods are what they used to be called, many of them, but that doesn't really have a real definition. So they're really incredibly nutrient dense, and that leads to some of their benefits in the body. They've been used for thousands of years across the world. Almost each one of them was so revered in the culture and the place that it comes from. And I almost felt redundant at times as I was writing the book and saying, like, Tulsi, holy basil, this is the most sacred plant in India. Mm-hmm. And then reishi, this is the most holy mushroom or species in all of traditional Chinese medicine. And cacao, this was so valued, it was a currency, but really each one of these was kind of elevated to the highest status possible because of how powerful they are and safe. So they occupy this really interesting line where they are non-toxic. So most of the traditional knowledge of them is taken every day, more food-like than medicine-like. They're all very balancing, and they're non-specific. And we can get into more depth about what this means. But the word adaptogen wasn't coined until the late 1940s. And it's kind of the first time these have all been grouped together. But it's important to recognize that these are so much older and have so much more anecdotal use to them before this word adaptogen was created. It comes from the Latin word adaptere, which means to adapt. And so a lot of people think of adaptogens as supporting our bodies with stress and adapting to current conditions, which is very relevant today as we are bombarded with, as I say, stressors that used to come once a year. We'd remember this one day for the big stressor that hit on, September 27th, let's say it's the day the book comes out. And now we really have these big stressors. It feels like almost daily. And so they're incredibly relevant, but they have this wonderful history of use, like many of our plant medicines. But what really makes them unique is they also went through this 50-year period where there were gold standards. So that means double-blind, placebo-controlled trials to validate their use from a scientific lens. So this book really goes into both the history, the culture, the herbal lineage, as well as I read through 1,000 clinical trials to just pull kind of the most potent, relevant ones for each of the species to really back up what their benefits are. So it's comprehensive.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and needed. I think kind of regardless of your lens of knowledge, whether you resonate more with the history or the constituents or the clinical trials or the metaphors, I kind of have put it all in there to meet each reader where they're at.
No, and I think that's amazing that you have done that, because I think the history and where they come from, I mean, you can't change that. Whereas particularly in the West, and I think, people are coming from different viewpoints, and there are a lot of people who want that sort of that research base, and it's not that they don't work, it's just that the research hasn't been there until recently. And so bringing that and tying that together is fantastic to then have brought those studies where they have shown what has been known for hundreds, thousands of years is really good, so that those that want that evidence can actually see it.
Exactly.
So what made you, I mean, so many questions. I mean, one of them is like, what made you choose these particular ones? Because there must be more than the 21 adaptogens, but also, first of all, maybe start with what made you and Tero want to write a book together, about adaptogens. Did you feel there was a missing element about it? Was it your passion? What made you come together over this?
Great question. There's a couple answers. The first is we think really similarly, and our paths crossed almost 5 years ago and have been working together really closely at Four Sigmatic for the past about 5 years. And Tero has this amazing upbringing where he grew up foraging a lot of these adaptogens. He grew up in Finland, where many of these species come from, like chaga and rhodiola and several others. And my background is an herbalist and working in clinical practice and seeing the benefits that a lot of these species were having on a one-on-one kind of clinical basis really inspired this sense of awe around these ingredients and what they can do for the world, and this shared desire to make them accessible to more people. And there's this really interesting intersection happening right now where for the first time since these adaptogens have existed, they are more accessible than ever before. And when we can go through each one by one, but part of what makes them so special for years is their rarity. They grow in really many of them extreme climates, which is what enables them to develop these really powerful adaptogenic compounds, right? It's like, we'll take rhodiola, for example, which grows, I found it up in Iceland last summer, or it grows in Mongolia, these really stressful environments. And the temperatures can fluctuate, several like 20 to 50 degrees a day. The soils can be rocky. They're really harsh conditions, and it forces these plants and mushrooms to develop compounds so they become resilient to these stressors. And one of the benefits that we as humans get from consuming these adaptogens is we can actually utilize some of those same compounds to help us combat the stressors in our life. And because of this, they've been in these rare kind of extreme places around the planet. And so they were not accessible to most people. They were really put on this pedestal, and some of them were only reserved for emperors, and others you had to, trade like so much of your life belongings to just get one cacao bean or a turmeric root. And now we can order them on Amazon and they can arrive at our door in 24-hour delivery, which is pretty wild. And the intersection is that's available, that's accessible. And at the same time, I look at the health, and we looked at the health of the global humanity today, but especially in the States where we both live now. And people are more stressed than ever before. We are more nutrient deficient than ever before. So the 40 most common fruits and vegetables are less nutrient rich than they were even several decades ago. And there's a lot about soil health and just that the lowering of the same foods. We can eat kale leaf now, but it's a completely different plant in terms of the nutrient density than it was 50 years ago. And so what this means is we have less tools to deal with all this stress. And beyond that, the demands are increasing. It's not as if we say, from a global perspective, we recognized everyone's really stressed. Just take a break, right? It's the opposite. It's like we need to do more and work harder, and responsibilities keep building. And so what I also see is a lot of people turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms, things like, all right, well, I'm really stressed. I need extra caffeine to get more done, or I need to take this sleeping pill that I know doesn't make me feel great the next day, but I need this quick fix. And so there's this kind of compounding situation happening in our bodies, and this accessibility of these species that, when knowing about them, and hopefully every listener here will become more passionate about them after our chat, it's like, what a ripe time to connect all of us humans to these amazing, I view them as allies. They're like friends that are here that we've relied on for generations to help us with brain function and energy and endurance and sleep and stress and so many of the things that we're looking for support with in the wrong place. So I really, my goal and our goal in writing this was to create a bridge. Like, how can this book be a bridge between where we're at now and knowing how to appropriately and effectively select adaptogens for your body so that we can get out of this downward spiral of health that we're kind of blindly entering into, or maybe in the midst of, and don't know what another way out can be. And they're so safe and they're so effective. And so it's a really great step in the direction to start healing and feeling really vital again.
Thank you, Anna. That was, I really love that explanation. And I love the fact you keep coming back to this safe. And I think that's a really comforting thing for a lot of people who don't or haven't understood what adaptogens are. And, you've heard that term being put around. And as you say in your book, you've got a lovely, the way that you start the book, you've got this kind of visualization of like what your life is now, this franticness, you're living and waking up and having a coffee and going through your day, and then trying to visualize your day, how you would actually feel if you feel on top of the world and you have the energy. And I love that visualization, but it's trying to take people from how they live to how they want to live. But the word safe is really comforting, because I think people are often quite scared when it comes to, like you said, you think of herbs which have, dangers, and you think of, that's why you train as a herbalist, because there are toxic effects if you take things too much. Whereas adaptogens, when you say they're safe, they're taken more like a food. And I think that's very comforting for people to know that. And, and you explain that through the book. And I think that's really good with each of the adaptogens, how you explain how they can be used, and I just think it's brilliant that you're bringing this to to the world. One of the things I wanted to pick up though is the Amazon point. Do you feel, and I know that you do talk about how to look for adaptogens, and I'm maybe going off on a tangent here, but I suppose it's that thought that, is this sustainable? Humans are just so unsustainable at the moment. Like you said, we're unsustainable in our stress. We're unsustainable in the way that we are growing our crops, in the way that we're destroying the soils. By making this available to people, you could have come up with both arguments. One, you're kind of like making something more available so people can then tap into it. Is that going to make it unsustainable? But then also what I really do love about it in the book is the fact that you're saying, well, you need to look for it where it's extracted, where it is sustainable, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe you could explain a bit more about it in a more articulate way.
Yeah, this is a really great and important question, and something that's always top of mind as an herbalist. And we've seen this for many years when species become really popular, and then everyone gravitates towards them. And then they do enter the, often, not always, but the endangered species list. And so being really mindful is critical always when we're using nature as medicine, but particularly with ingredients that tend to be really trending. And what I do want to mention is adaptogens exist on a spectrum. And so we call out 21 in this book that we felt were really relevant for what people are dealing with today. And there's some, that are much more like foods, the moringa and cacao and turmeric. And there's others that are a little more pushy. So things on the pushier side could be like the ginseng and eleuthero and rhodiola. So we can go through those. But we included this shopping guide. It's part 3 of the book, as you mentioned, and it is so important for not only your body receiving the benefits, but for the sustainability piece to check off. We kind of have these 5 pillars that we're like, anytime you're shopping for these ingredients, whether it's at your local health food store or online or in a big box store, we give all these options, or from a, bulk herbal site, you really need to go through these kind of 5 factors. And one of them is sustainability, right? And a big piece of that is sourcing from the country of origin in which these ingredients are found naturally is really important, right? The purity. So making sure we're supporting organic agriculture whenever possible. Another piece, which might seem strange when we talk about sustainability, but is bioavailability, which we talked about this on our previous conversation with mushrooms and the importance of extraction. But even with plants, if you don't know the form that and the way it needs to be processed, essentially, for our bodies to utilize it, you might be wasting a lot, right? So this is the case with mushrooms. You actually, you don't need a whole lot. You just need to extract a bit, and it becomes highly concentrated. And so being mindful and conscious consumers is a goal of this book. Often we say the most expensive supplement you'll ever buy is the one that doesn't work. And a lot of that is buying, the wrong thing. And this can be meaning someone that's over harvesting, or, spraying something with herbicides or pesticides, or not extracting. So you're actually consuming, 10 times more than you need. Another big piece about sustainability that, again, it might seem like a tangent, but it was intentional in the book, was for every species, we write what their best friends are. And
I love that.
These are other ingredients. Some of them are herbs, some of them are mushrooms, some of them are, vitamins like vitamin C that increase the potency. They enhance our body's ability to use them. And so you actually need a lot less to have greater effects when you combine. And so there's lots of kind of tips and tricks, I guess would be the layman's way to put it, about how to ensure you're sourcing properly and you're supporting only brands that are doing it right, that have sustainability in mind. And that said, yeah, who's to say, how many people will start using these adaptogens, and we have to continue to be mindful and conscious and only use what we need. And another piece of this is I hope that adaptogens can be one step to helping people break the spiral of what they may be experiencing today, the stress or the caffeine or the sugar crashes or whatever the kind of negative lifestyle that practices or experiences might be that people are looking for other solutions for. Adaptogens aren't the only answer. So it's a great stepping stone to kind of break the cycle, bring more of a quick feeling of vitality, right? They're known to raise chi in a lot of the traditions they've been used in, but it can't replace a healthy diet or an exercise regimen or drinking clean water or avoiding microplastics in the environment, right? All of these other things that are critical to health. Adaptogens are just one piece of that. So I feel it's important to call out when we talk about sustainability as well, because you don't need a whole lot and you perhaps don't need it for ever and ever. Or you can use the right ones, right? And choose some species that are much more abundant than others and maybe even be better suited for your body.
Really well said. And it's my previous career working in sort of sustainability and the environment. It's just something that I pick up on. And I think everything you've covered there is fantastic. And I think that's why your book is so needed, because it's so easy to go on the internet and think, oh, these are things that are going to help me, but people are not properly educated around it. And I think that's where your book is really clear. And it is, and I love the way that each of the adaptogens is really, really clear in what they do. At the end where like you said, you've got the best friends, and it's very, very easy to read, to flick through, to find the right areas. So well done on that. I just want to say really, really well done. I can't wait to feel the physical copy in my hands over it, and you covered and answered everything I said about, harvesting and doing it in a sustainable manner that I think will make, my listeners really sort of happy and confident about that as well.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, I have a history in sustainability and environmental activism as well. And when we can start to form a relationship with plants or mushrooms as medicine, I find that the value that we put on them increases, right? We're like, wow, I need this, right? This is helping me. This is an ally. This is powerful. And it connects us more to the earth and hopefully inspires a sense of wanting to protect the wild places that these ingredients grow. And so that's another maybe slight.
I think it's good. I like it.
It's a dance around, but for me, I'm like, how can someone care about the landscape, in which gynostema grows if they've never heard of gynostema or know what it does or have felt it in their body? But once they do, who knows what, they're called to do to keep that species around.
No, I really like, I really like that connection. There are so many quotes in your book. I was making some notes when I was going through going, I want to talk about this and I want to talk about that. One of the first ones that came up, just because it's kind of connects with what I do, is where you've put, we believe our bodies are wise and desire to not just survive, but to thrive. This is something I totally believe and align with. And funnily enough, my business slogan, whether you've picked that up or not, is Thrive and Conceive with Endometriosis. Because I think that just thriving is something that often we just are surviving in life at the moment. So to thrive is just, we've forgotten about it. And I think it's really important that we can use nature to help us remind and provide us with these tools to do so. Another analogy, I've got another one as well that I absolutely love, that maybe you could talk a little bit more around, is thinking of our health as a flowing river and how adaptogens relate to this. Be really good if you can kind of explain it, because I think it's really helpful for our listeners to understand their journey to pain-free periods and improving their health and fertility. It's kind of exactly like this, is their health is like a flowing river and they can be blocked, and how these adaptogens can help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. This has resonated with me so much in private practice and over the years, and people feeling like I'm so stuck in the way that my body is feeling and why is it, and wanting to use Band-Aids or quick fixes to, deal with the dysmenorrhea pain or that headache or the digestive upset or whatever the manifestation might be. And this flowing river analogy is a way to say, hey, what is at the root of this? What is blocking our vitality from flowing freely, right? Our bodies are designed to heal. Whether, we see that in so many examples. We get a cut on our arm and our body heals it quickly, right? We develop this scar tissue and a scab. And but it's everywhere. Like, we are designed to heal. And if we can acknowledge that and say, wait, why aren't I healing in the way that I know my body's meant to? There can often be these, I think of them like boulders in the middle of the river that are preventing us from really being in that flow of health, of vitality. And so identifying what those boulders might be, oftentimes there are lifestyle practices that are getting in the way, like food sensitivities or, another big boulder is often stress. And I think where adaptogens come in is really helping us deal with stressors. They're not going to take away stress, right? Stress is inevitable. And that's part of what makes these so relevant is we have so many stressors, both internal and external stressors, things we can control and we can't, right? We might be able to meditate every day or do our breath work and control our internal state, but we also are living in a world that's more toxic than ever before, right? And it's unavoidable, just what's in our water and air. And when we think about stress, like the definition of stress, it's pushing you off kilter, and then it requires energy to get you back into a state of balance and equilibrium. And so if you think of one of these boulders in the river as stress, it's preventing the life force from healing, from flowing, this river from moving. And where adaptogens can come in, this analogy I use is they're like kind of like river keepers, like, oh, okay, I'm going to kick this stressor out of the way, or I'm going to move this over here and find a different way for that flowing river, our health, our chi, our life force to keep moving. And there's so much more there, but I guess that was I threw that in there.
No, and definitely. And I think that kind of leads on to kind of like the more scientific side. And I don't expect you to dive in too deep there because, people can read it in the book really. But, one of the things that you go into is the more scientific side, which is presenting all of the elements within the adaptogens, not all the elements, but certain elements that, I've lost my word there, that cause our body to adapt. So, terpenes, I can't say that. I've said that wrong, haven't I?
Yes, triterpenes.
Triterpene. I can never say it. But there's various different compounds, aren't there, within the adaptogens. Then how do those compounds then maybe talk about the different types of compounds. I think maybe is a good thing to touch on, that different plants, different mushrooms have different compounds that help to work on our bodies and our body draws from them.
Correct. So as I mentioned in the beginning, these are incredibly phytochemically complex, which means there are many identified groups of compounds. Typically, we think of a food for having a high amount of vitamin C, for example, or another food for having a really rich amount of magnesium, or another, and adaptogens have many of them, hundreds of different identified compounds together. And so what this means when it's working on the body is, I think of it like a bath almost, or a shower, like flooding multiple organs and systems of our body simultaneously, which results in a non-specific response. This is one of the three pillars of what defines an adaptogens. One of them, they're non-toxic, as we talked about, this safety component. Another one that's relevant here is this non-specific aspect. And this is kind of hard for us as Western minds to truly understand, because we are so ingrained in a belief of allopathic medicine, right? Treating a specific ailment. And adaptogens do not work in that way. They are nourishing to multiple systems at the same time, which is what results in so many profound benefits and what makes them hard to categorize. Like, we really tried to do that in the book. Okay, we made these 3 sections, like to defend, to perform, and to restore. But part of what makes adaptogens is that they can't be put into a box, right? So I can take ashwaghanda root, for example, and it may help me fall into a really deep sleep, right? I might be kind of sleep deprived, and that might be exactly what I need to wake up with a lot of energy the next morning and feeling really good and ready to take on the day. But Lizzie, maybe you're really getting awesome sleep and like have a totally different approach, and your body's in a different state when you meet that same ashwagandha root. And so you take the same thing, maybe it's the same root or the same supplement bottle, and you have a totally different reaction. Maybe you feel all of these brain benefits, right? You're like, wow, I'm really focused today. Or I don't know, you have higher stress and you're like, wow, I'm able to deal with these stressors easier. So the effect that these have in each body will be different based on where the body's at when they approach this adaptogen, because of the range of compounds that are working together. And so I almost think of like, if the body is deficient in some area, the compounds that are filling that place in the body will have a louder or more noticeable effect for that person. Does that make sense? I can try to explain it in another way too. Okay.
No, I think it makes absolute sense. And I'm sitting here and I have no idea why I keep thinking of Tetris. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm thinking of all these blocks coming down and like filling the right places, and everybody's got a different pattern. I don't know where that came from.
That's it. I've never heard that with adaptogens, but it's really, I love that metaphor, because everybody is, it's like
everyone's different
blocks. And with all plant medicine, it really is about, I think of it more like matchmaking. It's like if we all take the same herb, there's always variability, right? This is bio-individuality, part of the magic of working with plant medicine, as opposed to concentrated compounds that have the same effect in everybody that takes them, right? Which is most of our pharmaceuticals. So there's this magical piece that happens, and it is kind of like a Tetris of like, oh, what's going to fit? What's going to jive in your system? And adaptogens are even more so relevant for that metaphor, because they're non-specific, right? And I guess, like, to give
just work it,
yeah, they work with you. I mean, so many things we take, they do have a specific action, even if they're natural. It's like we take valerian or skullcap to fall asleep, right? They relax our nervous system when we fall asleep. That's a specific action. Or echinacea, we take to activate immune cells and help us fight off infection. Like, that's a specific action. Adaptogens are the few, there's a few dozen of them in the entire herbal and fungi kingdoms that are non-specific, as well as non-toxic and normalizing, which we can get into. But that's a lot of their nature, and why it's so important to keep an open mind and say, okay, I'm going to work with this adaptogen, and not have expectations of how it's going to work in my body. I see a lot of people like, oh, I'm going to take lion's mane for the brain supportive benefits. And what they notice is their digestive health is a lot better, or they didn't get that cold that they typically get at the change of season, or they're sleeping deeper. And I mean, that's amazing. It's like, who are we to think we know what our bodies need in each moment? And so there's this like wisdom of the plants and mushrooms that can come in and really work in a deeper, more subtle way that is, I think of it like bathing, nourishing some of the vital organs in our bodies.
I love that, the bathing and nourishing. I really love it. Again, my scientific side of my brain, is picking up on one point here that, and maybe not so interesting for my listeners, but when you say, I've lost the point of what I was going to say, but When you're saying that, obviously it's different for everybody. As a scientist, when they're doing their research, this must have been really difficult, because obviously they can look at the compounds individually and they can go, well, that compound's good for that, and that compound, I can see why there are benefits. But from a research point of view, it must have been really, really difficult to then provide evidence of how it's affecting people, because if it affects everybody differently, the outcomes are going to be really, really difficult. So is that one of the reasons why maybe it's taken a long time to get any evidence base behind adaptogens, where it's been known for thousands of years from a sort of historical local culture perspective that they do good? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. This is one of the reasons, more than adaptogens, this is one of the reasons why it's so challenging to create clinical trials around plants, because there is such high variability.
Yeah.
And even, I don't know why lemon balm keeps coming up. Melissa officinalis, one of my favorite plants, but it's based on that season. What was the soil like? Where was it grown? What was the rainfall that year? At what time of year was it picked? What part of the plant? How was it extracted? This is all going to create a different medicine and therefore a different effect. With adaptogens, there has been more research on these plants than any other group of plants or mushrooms. And yet it was interesting. Like, there's so many benefits, right? It's not like, let's think of an example, like maybe a more common one. I don't know, like pick an adaptogen. Lion's mane might be more common. I'm using as a nootropic. They're like, oh, lion's mane for the brain. So all the research must be around brain health. That's not the case. How we worked this book is we chose 3 key benefits, and there's many more than that. We probably could have chosen 10 and found clinical trials that support these kind of key 3 things. So for lion's mane, we talk about the benefits for brain, right? And the clinical trials that have gone into that. We also talk about lion's mane for longevity, this anti-aging effect that perhaps isn't thought about often with lion's mane. And then third, we talk about it for immunity. And there's research to support all of these benefits. And that's an interesting point with research in general. It's like there's lots of flaws, but oftentimes the research is funded because you're looking for a medicine for a very specific ailment, right? It's less generalized. Like, oh, I wonder what plants or mushrooms are really great for general immune health. It's not really how it works. It's like, I want to know exactly what compounds can be beneficial for this one disease or this one kind of diagnosis. And so, we were trying to like honor how adaptogens act in the body, which is in this non-specific nature, and pull clinical trials. And what that led to was choosing 3 benefit categories. So it kind of meets both lenses. It's like, okay,
and that's really helpful, because I can imagine how difficult it would have been to write it with that in view, and the way that in the Western world we do, there is this desire to have so much research behind things, and it's like, well, actually in reality it's not that there is a lack of, there is a lack of, but it's not a simple reason why. And I think sometimes people need to realize that you need to combine sort of this historical evidence, clinical evidence, research base all together, and the way that you've done that to bring it together to then understand how these adaptogens work.
That was the goal.
No, and I think you've done very well. I'm looking at like one of your pages here, schishandra, for example, and it's just, I just love the way that it's very, very simple. And listeners, you'll have to go out and buy the book to actually see how easy it is to read the book and then understand, and then you can dive in deep and have, read into a brief history and read into it. But I found it very, very good to go through.
Yeah. So, it's like what I've seen since I've been working with these species for a decade plus is there's either these big clinical textbooks out there that, unless you're a physician or have a medical background or an herbalist, it's really challenging to read and boring, and you probably won't understand a lot of the context in there. Or there's this massive amount of blogs, right? These like short form, what's ashwagandha, what's schishandra, what's rhodiola, and like a lot of it's inaccurate or not factual or not supported by either tradition or research. And it's like I felt there really needed to be a middle ground, and Tero did as well, that is approachable, right? It's accessible. Like, if you've never heard of these species, our goal is that you can gain a lot from this book and still understand every word in it. You know, we really tried to steer away from the like highly clinical, like getting too deep into compounds, while still sharing enough to honor like what has been done, both in terms of research and the anecdotal use of these amazing ingredients.
So I'm going to move on part of my brain past the sciencey bit now and say, cover something you said earlier was, you know, you've divided the adaptogens into these three categories: defend, perform, and restore. And, you know, it's something that we talked about before with mushrooms, you know, in the fact that they don't particularly like necessarily work specifically in that, but it's the way that you've helped divide the book up so that it's approachable for people to like go, right, okay, I want to particularly defend, or I want to increase my performance or help restore. How can this relate to someone with endometriosis and a couple trying to conceive? You know, maybe some examples here would be really, really helpful for my listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So knowing that we are used to choosing medicines or plants or whatever we're bringing in to support our body based on where we're at, we created this general 3-tiered system. So defend is really about the immune system, the digestive system. It's kind of this baseline of building resilience in the system to prepare for the inevitable stressors of the future. So it's kind of like our landing pad, these defend adaptogens. And so some are more prone to immune health, some skin health, some digestive health. Again, they're non-specific, so we grouped them as best as we could, but think of them as like that kind of fertilizing the soil of the body, this defend, the building. And then we grouped others into this perform category. And these are more ingredients that you might use for acute needs, not necessarily, but the performance we have are about brain or body performance. So do you want more mental support and cognitive brain power, or are you looking for more physical performance? Maybe that's an exercise, endurance. There's libido supporting ingredients in this section, but these are really the performance, like how you can adapt to current stressors. Like, okay, there's something right there. I know I'm in a stressful time. I really need to turn on my brain or turn on my body. This is when I would turn towards the performance category. Mm-hmm. And then the third is this restoration. And this is really where I would focus for your listeners specifically. It's a place of nourishing. Think of restore as recovering from past stressors, and they're the most gentle of all the adaptogens. They're really specifically beneficial, which is like, I can't use the word specific when I talk about adaptogens, but they're greatly helpful, let's say, for things like recovering and for inflammatory response, for longevity. Okay. And so I would really focus here, especially with many women listening that have endometriosis. Some ingredients in this chapter are Tulsi, or holy basil.
I love Tulsi. Yes.
We also have reishi mushroom in this category, right? One of my favorite. Oh, they're all my favorite, but in different ways. Yes. But profoundly supportive for heart health and longevity and relaxing and restoring the nervous system, enabling us to get good sleep. Ashwagandha is in this category. And then we put other adaptogens that we argued were adaptogens that maybe others might say are not, but things like cacao, the most magnesium rich natural food on the planet. So important for all. I mean, magnesium is the number one nutrient deficiency in the American diet. And it's the mineral responsible for relaxation. I call it like our cellular relaxation aid. And so when we think about, endometriosis, we think about hormone imbalance or HPA axis issues. We have to think about, okay, well, where's this stress, this inflammation coming from, and how can we support it? And a lot of times I think about, what is this body deficient in, right? And that is a way to support. And so bringing really nutrient rich plants and mushrooms on board, like the cacao or like the reishi, can be really a great starting place to kind of reset the body, support the adrenals, lower inflammation, and then see kind of what symptom picture still remains once you have the body fulfilled in those areas.
And I always recommend having reishi, cacao, drinks, and you've put their best friends, reishi, macuna, vanilla, cinnamon, coconut. And I love it, adding some cinnamon in there as well, and coconut milk or something like that.
So good.
I know, so good, so tasty. And I have to say, I was very, very happy when Four Sigmatic brought out their decaffeinated coffee and reishi. I was like, yes, you don't have to have the caffeine, and you can have the taste of the coffee without the caffeine, and you can have the reishi, so it's really calming. So I was very pleased about that.
Yeah, I actually don't drink caffeine at all anymore because of hormonal issues, and adaptogens, these especially gentle adaptogens, have been such a powerful replacement. I don't think we realize how intense the caffeine can be on our adrenals, but just on our entire hormonal production system. And so giving our bodies a break, but allowing us to keep that routine, right? And it's like, we can take out the caffeine, and oh my goodness, even that is profound. But then if we can add in the chaga and the reishi and the cacao, I've been making this morning beverage every morning with like a big chunk of cacao, and I put it in the blender with hot water, and I add cinnamon and cardamom and lion's mane and reishi and sometimes half a date and coconut milk, and blend it up. And I'm like, this is why would I ever drink coffee again? This is
exactly
like a child having a big warm cup of like superfood hot chocolate to start my day. Like, how lucky.
Yeah, and it is amazing. And I have to say, my little boy, I've always had him on, like, he's never had like a true hot, like what you call a true hot chocolate. It's not the true hot chocolate, the Western hot chocolate. He's kind of had my kind of like funky alternative, and he absolutely loves them. And I think actually recently he had a real one. He was like, oh, this is very sweet.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I was like, yes. So I think we have covered, and I think what you said there in terms of starting, if you've got endometriosis, starting with the Restore, because I was going to say, you've got these 21 essential adaptogens in the book. In terms, I was going to ask you, how do people get started? But I think what you've said there is start maybe with the Restore section, possibly also cover the Defend because of the immune side with endometriosis, perhaps.
Definitely. Yeah. I was going to say if beyond the Restore, again, it was like, these can't be grouped. That's part of it's like hilarious to group them.
Good.
But we added turmeric in this book as well, which is not often written about as an adaptogen, but when you really look at its phytochemical makeup, you're like, wow, and how it works in the body. You're like, this is definitely an adaptogen. It's just more gentle. It doesn't have these kind of pushier effects that some of them are thought of. And turmeric is a really wonderful option for endometriosis, and amazing, as we know, anti-inflammatory. We put it in this Defend section because part of our Defend chapter is the immunity and gut health, and another part is about beauty and skin, and really defending, right? Looking at our skin as our largest organ, and how can we protect the skin from the inside out. And so actually looking at the beauty and skin, even though it's kind of funny to group it in that way, this group, there's 4 species in this category, and they're really aligned for for your audience as well. So we have turmeric, we have goji berry, schishandra, and acerola cherry. And these are all really bright, colorful. Turmeric's the only root in here. And then we have goji, schisandra, and acerola are all fruits. They're all berries, but they're incredibly bright, meaning they're full of a ton of basically anti-inflammatory phenols and vitamins and minerals, and can be another really more food-like, especially with the acerola cherry and goji, way to support and nourish some of the inflammation and stressors going on in the system in a really gentle, non-invasive way.
Thank you. That's really, really useful. And one thing I want to pick up on the goji berry, because this is where I think it's brilliant that you've got this information there, because it's something, when you do read stuff on blogs, you do see things that people put out there, and they don't necessarily have it backed up by evidence or clinical evidence, etc. Mm-hmm. I heard someone talking ages ago about goji berries and causing leaky gut. Have you heard that? So it's funny. I've kind of always stuck away from it, but then I really want them. So I'm like, it's really nice to see it in here and kind of just, reaffirm that actually they really are very good. Have you heard that?
I haven't heard that. I'd be super curious about where that came from. Let's fact check it, because if we look, goji is a food. It's a fruit. It's been used that way. Amazing, like longevity berry. We already mentioned these colorful antioxidants, but it's also a whole protein. It contains all 18 amino acids in it. It has many of our important B vitamins that aren't found in a lot of other plant foods. It has B1, B2, B6, and it's loaded with minerals. That's one of them. All of these are unique to have all the amino acids, but rich in zinc and potassium, selenium, manganese, magnesium, just a total powerhouse of nutrients. And the effect that can have in the body is I'm like, want to say trifold, but like it's endless to see what that might result in your body based on where you're at when you meet the goji. And there's nothing. I've never heard. I'm so
and it's.
About this
I can't remember who I heard it ages ago. They did a whole video masterclass on it, and it's like the secret is that don't eat goji berries. And I was like, what is this? But it just goes to show though that there is so much stuff that's not accurate out there, and so having a book like this that kind of explains, it just it's just
and this is a good place to mention. In each chapter we go into this preparation, sourcing, and dosing, because this is the only thing I could think of. If there was a batch of goji berries, where often their goji are treated with chemicals, it's usually treated with sulfur dioxide. And this is a toxic gas. It can be really irritating to the tissues of the body. So internally to our lungs and mucous membranes, externally to the skin. And so that's the first thing I mentioned with goji is you have to look for this minimally processed berry. It can't be exposed to high heat. You want to maintain the maximum amount of nutrients in there. And a lot of times they come from overseas, like many of these adaptogens. And so you want to be sure that it hasn't been radiated, is pretty common when it goes through customs. And so I'm curious if there was a source, with this leaky gut example, where it was like, it could have been like a highly sulfur dioxide radiated goji berry, which then is toxic and could of course that would damage the gut lining and lead to inflammation. But this is why quality and sourcing are so relevant and so important.
I think that's a really good point. Really good point. Thank you for clarifying on that random piece of information. So
I love it.
Let's talk a little bit about extraction, because it's something that people might bring up, or they might not. Kind of with regards to endometriosis, extraction, you talk about it in your book about you can extract with alcohol and with water. I just wanted to cover the fact that when you're extracting, it's not then keeping it in the alcohol, because the alcohol for women with endometriosis who often have histamine intolerance or mast cell activation syndrome can't deal with the alcohol. Like I've had it personally where I've been given herbal tinctures that are in alcohol, and literally I react very instantaneously to the alcohol because it's just so strong in it. Yeah. Just to clarify that the extraction process, it might go through the alcohol, but it doesn't then have the alcohol in it. So it's not going to react the same way as if you had a herbal tincture made in alcohol.
It depends.
Okay. That's the way I want to ask.
So typically we will extract to pull out and make compounds more bioavailable to the body. And if the compounds are water soluble, so there's many vitamins that are water soluble. One of the compounds we go into a lot in this book is polysaccharides, which are these complex sugars found in mushrooms. They're what are amazing for immune supporting gut health in all of our mushrooms. Sugars are water soluble, right? And so those species that have these water soluble medicinal benefits, those can be extracted in a tea or in a decoction. That's the water element. There's other compounds found in a lot of these adaptogens that are not water soluble. They're needing to be extracted in a higher alcohol. So the oil soluble compounds, like these triterpenes we mentioned, oil and water don't mix very well. So if you're pulling out fat or oil soluble compounds, those need to be extracted in an alcohol. And this comes back to being a conscious consumer, because you can buy tinctures, like it sounds like you've done in the past, that are high in alcohol. And when we extract, we use the highest form of alcohol possible. So it's typically like 100 proof, like Everclear. And that can be really potent, but that's like the blankest slate, right? To pull out as much of the compound from the plant. So you might want to avoid that. Another option that's non-alcohol, we didn't go into it in the book, is glycerin. Glycerin is wonderful to extract similar compounds that doesn't leave any alcohol in the final product. And then I guess the last piece I want to mention is a lot of times this is what we do at Four Sigmatic. We do extract in both water and alcohol, and then dehydrate both of the extraction mediums. And so what's left is just a concentrated powder with no alcohol remaining. And so, you could find this if you're using a powder or a capsule, it might say that the ashwaghanda was extracted, for example, but if it's been dried, and it's usually a spray dry, like dehydration process, there will often be no alcohol left in that remaining product.
Yeah, which is what I wanted to know. So that's really helpful for people who do have the histamine issues, which a lot of people with endometriosis do have.
Yes.
So finally, I love the last chapter, which we've briefly touched on as well, is the shopping guide. And we've talked about that, how to buy adaptogens. It makes it really, really practical for readers. Can you give us some excuses people can give as to why they won't use adaptogens, and what your response would be? That's rather a weird question, actually.
Yes.
I wrote that beforehand.
Yes, I hear this a lot. And part of the book was like, okay, let's just be really clear about the reasons people come, like, yeah, this is my excuse, and therefore I'm going to deter. And it's like, okay, we hear that. We actually named these excuses and wrote out how we respond to customers or clients or patients that tell us these are the reasons they've stayed away from them. And so the first is like, I just don't have enough time. Probably the most common thing. Like, I have a routine, I'm busy. It's too much to adjust it, to change it, to buy something new. I don't have time. And I give lots of solutions. I'll share one, is to habit stack. And we talked about this already with our morning beverages, but if you don't think you have enough time, then don't start something new. I don't encourage that. It's really hard to keep a new habit anyway. So instead, think about something you already do. and we do things consistently every day, whether we realize it or not. Some routine, maybe we drive to work, maybe we make a cup of coffee, maybe we, always have this one snack. And so I think the easiest thing to do if you don't have time is to add the adaptogen into that routine and make it really easy and obvious for yourself. Like, don't put it in a bottle in the cupboard that you have to pull it out. Like, add it into your coffee already, like mix it in, make it so easy so you don't have to think about it. And it just becomes the routine. It is the routine. You don't have to stress yourself out and change something and remember something, right? We're always looking for the path of least resistance here. Another excuse is like, I'm not going to remember to take them. And I used to tell my clients, I'm like, the medicine doesn't work if you don't take them, which is silly, but true. It's like, I could make the most perfect formula, but if you don't take them, you're probably not going to receive the benefits. And this kind of speaks to the same thing. It's like prepping the night before, or, keep it on your counter, like, keep it in your car, or put it in your pocket of, the jacket you're going to wear the next day. Like, what can you do? It's going to look different for everyone, right? So there's not like a direct formula, but it's really, okay, what are your habits? And bring it on board, make it easy. What does your counter look like? What is, your coffee ritual? Like, bring it front and center. So it's just integrated without you having to put much extra thought into it.
I really like those two. Really like them, because I think a lot of people with endo, and then obviously if you're trying to conceive, there's so much, so many things in life that are so stressful, and to try and find some routines and habits that you already have that you can, if you're having a warm drink in the evening, that you can add it to, like you said, if you're having a warm cacao drink or hot chocolate, can you make that a cacao drink with reishi in it, so right. Yeah. And I put my things out next to the kettle, if there's something that I need to take and I'm like, I cannot forget, it's like, stick it next to the kettle. I don't know why, because I like lots of herbal tea, so I see it all the time, like, yes, I must remember to do that.
Totally. And I've tried it other ways. I'm like, I've been having chlorella every morning. So I had this beautiful bottle of chlorella, and it was in my apothecary for months. And I'm like, oh, I should take it. I never took it. And I finally pulled it out and I put it next to my kettle, and I've been taking it every day. I'm like, it was that easy? I just had to move it 6 feet.
Yeah. I think because it's one of those things where you make a hot drink, whether it's a herbal tea, whether it's a cup of tea, whether it's a coffee. Yeah. Or I don't know, if you don't like hot drinks, some people don't like hot drinks. And if you have cold drinks, put it where you make your cold drink, or put it next to your water filter, put it somewhere where there's something, like you said, you do every day that you see it really obviously. If it's something you've got to take in the morning, put it next to your toothbrush.
Precisely. Exactly.
So yeah, no, I really like that you can come up with excuses, but actually there are ways that you can get these things in. And particularly once you start and you see the benefits from one, then you'll kind of get a little bit addicted and start another one.
Yeah. And there's more excuses. I'll just say, read the book. We really tried to make this comprehensive. So whatever's stopping you, we hopefully have a solution. And if not, reach out and we'll come up with a solution together for you.
And sort of getting to the end of the book, I absolutely love the amount of references you've got in there. We've touched on that already. It's just perfect for any practitioners that are listening. If you need a reference guide, or anyone that's just a geek, like I am, and like you are, that want to dive deeper into the subjects, and you're like, what are you doing? It's your bedtime reading. You want to look into some studies. But no, it's really good to see that. So really importantly, where and when can people get your book?
Yay. Okay. So it comes out on September 27th, 2022. So pretty soon here. And it's available anywhere books are sold. The easiest place to find it is healingadaptogens.com. And there are links there to Booktopia and Barnes & Noble and Amazon and wherever you prefer to purchase the book.
And can people purchase, do a pre-order beforehand, so to make sure they've got it, or is it just waiting until the 27th of September?
Great question. Pre-order is available now, today, and we have some really wonderful pre-order offers. If you pre-order through Amazon, you can let us know directly, and there's information about this on the website. Barnes & Noble is also running a pre-order offer on it right now. And as a thank you for pre-ordering, there's a couple gifts. One of them is this adaptogen before and after checklist that I created and I use with all of my clients as a way to really assess your health before taking an adaptogen and after.
Brilliant.
So you can tangibly see for yourself how your body is shifting. And I'm also taking 5 new clients into my private practice. So 5 people that pre-order will get a one-on-one clinical session with me, which I'm really excited to offer.
Wow, that is good. That is a really good thing.
Thanks.
All very, very exciting. Now, and I will put on the podcast sort of show notes on my website. I'll put that. So listeners, if you didn't quite get the website, or the website, what did you say? It was Healing
Adaptogens. Yeah, just the name of the book. Yep. .com.
Brilliant. Well, that's very easy. I don't think you can forget that, but I will put it up there as well. Now today, normally at the end, as I asked you before, I'm going to adapt to my final question. For those who are listening today, can take away one thing from your book. What would that be?
Oof. The one thing is that no matter where you are in your life, in your journey, in your health, there are safe allies ready to help and support you right now. And I'm thinking of this Anne Frank quote that's just coming up. And she says, how beautiful, you need not wait a single second or a single moment before changing your life. And that feels pretty potent right in this moment.
Thank you. I think that's a great way to finish. So normally I also ask where people can find and connect with you, which I think we went through before, through Four Sigmatic. Anywhere else?
Yeah, you can find me if you're interested more in the herbal side of things. My website is DanielleRyanWellness.com. And I can be found on social channels at Danielle Ryan-Broida.
Fantastic. Danielle, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. As ever, it's been a fantastic conversation all about your book, which is what the purpose of this episode was. And I just can't wait to, I've been through it, but I can't wait to read it word for word all the way through it. And I know that my listeners are going to definitely want to get this book because it's going to be a fantastic tool in there, in your toolbox to help with your endometriosis and also to help nourish and nurture your fertility. So thank you very much, Danielle, for bringing your expertise here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here and to get to share a bit of the wisdom of the plants, and hope this book and this episode and all of the wisdom that these ingredients bring can be another asset to everyone's healing journeys.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode and have some useful tips and actions you can take away and put into practice. This podcast is to add to your knowledge so you can delve into the whys behind your endo and fertility struggles and move forward with thriving and conceiving. It is not meant to replace your current medical advice. If you loved listening, then make sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. It would be amazing if you could take a minute to leave a review, as it will help in reaching more women who might benefit. Even better, if you know someone who would love to listen to this episode, then please share. If you want to find out more about who I am and what I do, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I also have a private Facebook group, Thrive and Conceive with Endometriosis, where I share all sorts of nutrition and health nuggets. My website, endofertilityspecialist.com, provides you with lots of information, including my Endofertility one-to-one health coaching program. Lastly, don't forget to sign up to my Endofertility Inner Circle to receive weekly news. The links are all in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you next week for another episode.